So the last thing we wanted to discuss before giving the word to Vanessa and Sandra is the vintage map. Sorry. So at this point, we've tried to understand the cause, consequences, relationships between climate, plant, leaf area, sugar, blah, blah, blah. How can we summarize and synthesize all of that into one snapshot? We have something unique in California, is that we are making vine in an arid environment. Arid environment, that means that we basically have zero chance to have rain between May and September. Because of that, it makes it very easy to characterize differences between vintages according to this simple modeling activity. What do we do? Well, on the y-axis, we try to combine what we call an agroclimatic model. Basically, because we understand what the climate effect is going to be on leaf area, well, we simply monitor between the last significant rain of springtime and the first significant rain of the autumn, how much water we received. So this axis is really a way to quantify the severity in terms of water deficit of the season. So what we are going to do is display different vintages along this axis as a way to quantify how little water we had during the dry section of the vintage. And on the x-axis, since we understood we've been talking about growing degree days back and forth, well, the idea is that during the heat accumulation period when leaf area develops, fruit accumulates sugar, and then skin finishes its maturation, we have long season or short season until the rain kind of turn off this stress. So what we are going to do is also ranking at the same time the vintages according to how long, but not in terms of civil calendar, in terms of plant calendar, heat accumulation, how long was the duration of this arid period during which plant and fruit matured together. Okay, so when we project all the vintages of just Napa, to give you an example, because we had more historical data, we found out that vintages like, so this is 2008 as an outlier, you see here 2014, you see here 2010, you see here 1998. So you see that basically you have all of those vintages displayed into a potato-like shape. The color of the label is relative to the frequency of heat wave during the last period, what I call the period 3, with the thought in mind that if you have a lot of heat wave before harvesting your fruit, it's probably going to affect the aroma profile of the fruit, and Jim just explained to us how it was going to affect the anthocyanin and the tannins content. So keep in mind, when it's red, more heat wave, when it's green, less heat wave during that last phase of fruit maturation. What we typically see is that when you take one step back and you look at how wine critics are analyzing those different vintages, you can see these axes. Basically, when you have many vintages in this area, the climatic footprint on skin composition and therefore wine composition is such that whatever you do in terms of vineyard management, the climate is ruling the game. Those vintages like 2010, 2011 in Napa, or 98, we call them climate vintages. And during those vintages, you see more uniformity across wine composition. When you go toward these axes on the longer season, you see, we are around 1800 growing degree days without a drop of water, and less water earlier, the impact of human practices is much stronger. Therefore, on vintages like 2014, 2013, you see way more variability from one vine to the next because it simply reflects differences in terms of practical choices. So I wanted to give you that as a preliminary context because in 2014 and 2013, the Napa vintage was very winemaker driven. Where is Paso Robles in that context? Well, Paso Robles is way more under the human practice influence than the Napa vintages that were over there, which makes it actually even more prevalent to discuss when to irrigate, when to cluster thin, how many buds to leave on your plant, what should be your crop load at targeting in order to achieve your production objective, because the climatic context is such that you guys are going to have way more impact on the final fruit composition than a winemaker in 2010 in Napa would ever have. So in that sense, I completely agree with what Stefan was saying earlier. Even if there is relatively little variations from year to year, because it's an arid climate, we know we have no rain, so vintage effect is less prevalent than, say, in Bordeaux, because you have much more variations in terms just of rain regime. We should not overlook the fact that our human practices in the context of Paso Robles are extremely predominant, way more than in Napa. That was the take-home. And to finish, I just wanted to give you what we could be doing based on the weather station history from Atascadero. As we pointed here, 2014, we are even more towards the bottom right of the spectrum. So we are in vintages where the footprint of the decision is just very strong. Maybe not as strong as last year or 2008, but still, you saw that vintages like here, 2002, where basically what was dominating was the frequency of heat wave before harvest. The prevalence of heat wave is less. So you have here 2012, where you see the level of water during the earlier phase of leaf area development was less limited, but then in exchange we were hit by the severity of the heat wave, and you see 2011 and 2010 as standing alone. So there is a variability from vintage to vintage, even if that smaller potato of Paso Robles. So that was the take-home, and hopefully this graph will spark some discussion. It's a model, so most models are wrong, but some are useful to organize ideas, and that's the only pretension of this idea, like how this vintage mapping is reasoning in you. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? How do you feel your practices can offset the climatic footprint on the food composition and later on the wine composition? That's really why we are all here for, and in the spirit of discussing ideas.